Hey guys, I think we're live now. All right, it says we're live. Thanks so much for tuning back into another Sunday Science session. Super excited that you all are here. Sorry for the small delay there. As always, this Wirecast thing is giving me a little grief. So very grateful that you're here. Today we're going to talk about muscle protein synthesis, specifically how beta-hydroxybutyrate may exert anti-catabolic effects within muscle tissue. So basically what that means, and what's the bigger picture here? A lot of you are concerned about the ketogenic diet as it relates to building muscle, burning fat, having an optimal physique. Some of you are having just 1 or 2 meals a day, and you're probably concerned, like, am I gonna lose muscle mass? Am I gonna get gains from the gym? What's gonna happen to me as I age? Because we know that as we age, we lose muscle tissue. It's just part of what happens, right? With growth hormone, testosterone, anabolic hormones, we become more inflamed with age. So I have some studies I'm gonna share with you, and a link to, let me drop it in the comments right here, and just check to see that we're on. So I'm going to review a paper from Andrew Kutnick, who's been on the podcast before. He works with Dom D'Agostino at University. He's down there. All right, so we got a few of you on here, which is great. So as always, guys, super excited that you all are here. I'm going to get to your questions here, but we have the whiteboard out again. And I do want to see if you guys can see the whiteboard. Let me pop out the chat here. I'm going to pop out the chat and see, can you all see the whiteboard? Let me know if you can see it. I mean, obviously you can see this, but can you make out some of the colors? Because what I want to do is kind of review where we were last week. And I'll put a link, I think, right here. We talked a little bit about fasting and autophagy and so forth, and there's a key point that George Cahill talked about in his research studies about gluconeogenesis. And let me just see, it looks like you can see that fairly well, but I'll just wait for some comments to come in here. Can you guys see the whiteboard? I'm just going to ask. Can you guys see the whiteboard? Someone says zoom out. So if I zoom out, that won't actually make it even more clear. If I zoom in, I think. Let me see here. If I zoom in about like that, it looks a little bit better. How does that look? Can you guys see this? Please let me know real quick. I don't want to. Can only see half of it. Okay, well I'm only going to color it to right here. So let's just dive into it, because I know all of you that are watching this in retrospect, because this is streamed live, when you watch later, you're like, dude, just get to it. So here's the thing, we just got to do a quick review, because I'm going to talk about the anti-catabolic properties of ketones in just a minute, but there's something that you really need to understand, and that's the anti-catabolic nature of ketones, and this is what George Cahill talked about a long time ago. And what they found is, let's just review the starvation response, because that has to do with ketogenesis and so forth. So in the first, between time 0, when you have a meal, and when you end at around 24 hours or 36 hours, what happens is you go through your body, store glucose or glycogen, right? And so what the body needs to do is come up with other ways to fuel the brain and tissues. And so part of that is to create adipose tissue lipolysis, where we're going to free up glycerol. Glycerol is part of the backbone of stored body fat, right? So glycerol is then going to be converted into glucose to fuel the obligate glucose utilizing cells of the body, the retina, the neuron, and so forth. And the free fatty acids then go on to make ketones. Now, here's what Cahill found, is that what tends to happen in this situation when ketones rise, the kind of liberation or the kind of breakdown, the catabolism of muscle tissue slows down. Okay, so there tends to be, and so this is going into the anti-catabolic roles of ketones. It's been shown that ketones can actually slow down muscle loss, and so we know in the starvation response. I mean, think about this, right? If humans got dumber and weaker when they had no food, how could they ever find food? How could they go hunt for food? How could they do things, think outside of the box to get food? It would be challenging, right? So as Max Lugavere has talked about on the podcast, reviewing all the different orexin A and neurotransmitters that are increased when we fast, well, it also makes sense that if all of our muscle mass just got stripped away the moment we didn't have any food, how would we ever go out and like kill an animal, start farming, start foraging for roots and tubers and things like that? How could we ever do that? It doesn't make much sense. And so that parlays into what we're going to talk about today, talk about that review study, which is linked below with Andrew Kutnick and so forth. And I noticed too, also, Peter Attia shared this a couple days ago. I shared this on Twitter like 2 or 3 weeks ago when it came out. So again, just to review last week, because I was super fired up. If you guys remember, my Wirecast software was giving me a ton of grief, and I was really amped up. I didn't even have any coffee. I'm trying to be a little bit more calm today. And we talked about the monocarboxylate transporters. So these are the transport proteins that also shuttle in lactate, pyruvate into cells and out of cells, but they also help acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate go into different tissues. So friends, if you're new to keto, if you're new to intermittent fasting, give this time. The adaptations, and we just caught up with David Ludwig. If you guys didn't see that video I posted yesterday where we talked about, adaptations to low carb diets take a long time. And so that's why he did a 20-week feeding study. You see different studies in these metabolic wards for 5-10 days. Okay, that's not enough time for these monocarboxylate transporters, which enable the gluconeogenic substrates to get in and out of cells and also enable the ketogenic molecules like beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate to get in the brain, right? So the monocarboxylate transporters, so we know about MCT, medium chain triglycerides. Don't get that confused. We're gonna do a whole video on monocarboxylate transporters shortly, but let's get into the anti-catabolic effect of ketones. Maybe I should come back. Well, I'll start here because this is, again, a great review. Last week I was super fired up because my damn software. But, the question that comes up a lot, and I think people, even in the ketogenic community, will say things like, well, if you're going to do a fasted workout, be sure to have some branched-chain amino acids or be sure to have some whey protein beforehand so that you can stimulate muscle protein synthesis and stimulate mTOR and so forth. And my thoughts on that is, yes, if you're a competitor, if you're really trying to build muscle, you're trying to do a competition, but if you're aiming for optimal health, a few days a week, I think doing a workout without any of that is a good thing. Now, as you guys know, full disclosure, I have a supplement company. I sell grass-fed whey protein. I sell branched-chain amino acids. So I'm telling you, certain days you don't want to have those before you work out if autophagy is your goal. And autophagy, obviously, is our body's intracellular recycling and garbage purging system, right? It's associated with all types of different health benefits. Obviously there's a U-shaped curve. Too much autophagy is not good. Too little autophagy is not good either. So keep in mind, guys, what's unique is as long as you're fat adapted, here's the thing. Here's what the point that I want to make on this. If you're fat adapted, okay, meaning that you've been eating low carb, high fat for more than say 90 days, okay, I don't think that you need to have whey protein or branched-chain amino acids when you do a workout. Because why? You will most likely be having elevated levels of ketones. And again, the paper that we're going to get to very soon shows that ketone, and it's been known since the 1980s, guys. 1980s. That's almost 40 years ago at this point, in the early 1980s, that ketones have anti-catabolic effect. Now, anti-catabolic effects. This has been confirmed by a study. Thompson, when did he publish a study? In 2018. So Thompson et al., we're getting to that study in a minute, actually did a study in humans where he got beta-hydroxybutyrate levels up and showed a reduction in leucine oxidation and an increase in muscle protein synthesis by 10%, okay? So again, getting back to should you have branched-chain amino acids or should you have whey protein when you work out if you're keto? Well, again, if autophagy is your goal, say no to the BCAAs and no to the whey protein just for that one workout, maybe 1 or 2 workouts a week. The other workouts you can knock yourself out, right? Because you want to stimulate autophagy. Taking the BCAAs and so forth might increase mTOR, which might slow down autophagy. Now, if the workout's really hard, if the workout's intense and you're already fat adapted, glycogen depleted, you're hungry, glucagon's high, then it maybe is not that big of a deal, right? Because you want to have a good workout too. You don't want to purge muscle or strip muscle, but again, as the study that we're getting to will show, if we have high levels of BHB around 1.6 or 2 millimolar, that's kind of where the sweet spot of their anti-catabolic effects come in. And so I say this because some of you are new to keto and you're like, all right, I'm gonna do fasted workouts. I'm gonna go do deadlifts and CrossFit, fasted. You know what? You probably don't have enough ketones yet to mitigate the potential anti-catabolic effects or to mitigate the catabolic effects that could be ascribed to working out in a low state. Does that make sense? I'm just gonna check into the feed and make sure we're good here. So, all right, I'm getting a lot of comments, raw eggs, raw meat, cool stuff, guys. I'm so grateful, as always. Friends, if you're here right now and you dig this content, hit that like button. Let me know in the comment bar. I go back and I look at all these different comments. I wanna know if this content is helpful for you. I read a lot of research, but I wanna make sure that the stuff that I'm reading and helping to share with you is applicable to your life. All right, so let's really dive into now with let me see, can you guys see that? It's looking dark. It's not looking like it's coming through very good. Let me know if you can see this. And if that's the case, what I'm going to do is, okay, everyone says it looks, someone says the bookcase looks great, whiteboard, no. That's not a good thing. All right, so screw the whiteboard. Let's not do the whiteboard. I don't need a whiteboard. I can just talk here. But the paper that we're talking about from Andrew Kutnick was a co-author with Dom D'Agostino. They reviewed some of the anti-catabolic effects that beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate offer. As I alluded to, some of this research started to emerge in the 1980s. And I think it's important to understand that part of the anti-catabolism induced from the ketone bodies, part of that inhibits lipolysis. And this is actually a really important point for those of you taking exogenous ketones. Because a lot of people think that if they take ketones, what's going to happen? They're going to lose body fat. But that's not always the case. Because what ketones actually do, friends, is they inhibit adipocyte lipolysis, okay? So, I'm not saying never take exogenous ketones, but if you can see right here, your fat cells release glycerol and free fatty acids. Ketones, part of their anti-catabolic effect is they inhibit adipocyte lipolysis. And so what does that mean? And it's a feedback mechanism, right? Because remember, everything, the body has homeostatic mechanisms to keep things in balance, right? So if ketones didn't inhibit adipocyte lipolysis, there would be just too much fats circulating around. So when there's a certain blood millimolar of ketones, guess what happens? They inhibit fat cells from releasing free fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so it makes sense. It's a feedback mechanism. So this is why I recommend microdosing or doing small amounts of exogenous ketones if you're going to use them in that way, so that you're not giving this bolus signal that's going to suppress your adipocytes from releasing their own stored fat. Does that make sense? I hope that you understand that. I'm going to say it again a little bit more slowly, just so it sinks in for everything, for everyone, for everything. Ketones have anti-catabolic effects in the body. Part of that may be, and we're going to talk about how they can affect muscle protein synthesis, but part of their anti-catabolic effects is inhibiting the breakdown of stored fat. Okay, now, this, like anything else, is a dose-dependent phenomenon, friends. You need to understand this. This is really important. So by slamming down a bunch of exogenous ketones, you're going to send the messages to your body to inhibit lipolysis of fatty acids from the fat cells. This, again, these are just homeostatic mechanisms, right? It's like when you turn down, there's a million mechanisms, you know, we could think about, right? I have a wood stove in my house, and if my furnace was working, and if I had a furnace, if the wood stove was on, the furnace is going to read the thermostat and it's going to turn off. The furnace is not going to work. Why would the furnace need to make heat if the wood stove is making heat from burning wood? You see what I'm saying? So that makes sense. So when the body recognizes a blood millimolar that's very high in ketones, it starts to inhibit this, and then it will utilize the ketones, and then when it needs more, right, this lipolytic pathway is going to be upregulated. Now, the point here for those of you, it's not that exogenous ketones are bad, it's that you don't want to just slam these bolus dosages if you're trying to lose weight. Take smaller amounts periodically, pulse throughout the day. Or if you're going to do a very intense exercise event, then you could do a bolus dose then. But so let's get to the research by Thompson et al. Okay, so this is a human published study. And you need to understand one aspect of the study, and that's that, let me see if I can draw this and it'll show here. Gosh, this pen is just crap. Long story short, so what Thompson et al. Found in humans when I don't know if it's he or she, when these scientists injected lipopolysaccharide or endotoxin, and we talked a lot about this in my book Belly Fat Effect if you're interested, but gram-negative bacteria have this appendage substance on their cell membranes called endotoxin. It's also known as, and the synonym for endotoxin is lipopolysaccharide. This is known to have pro-catabolic effects, pro-inflammatory effects. It's been known to pivot immune cells out of fatty acid oxidation to stimulate glycolysis, to induce insulin resistance. All these different pro-inflammatory signaling molecules like TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, interferon gamma, interleukin-1 beta, all these pro-inflammatory signaling molecules are upregulated when our bodies are exposed to endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide. Again, those words are synonymous. So this Thompson researcher, what he found is in fasted subjects, when he infused endotoxin into their bloodstream, their muscle tissue showed increased catabolism, markers of elevated levels of catabolism. Then the researchers infused and got blood millimolar levels of beta-hydroxybutyrate to 3 millimolar. Let me just double check that. I'm sorry. Yeah, so he infused ketones to 2 millimolar. So that actually that's achievable. So 2 millimolar, I mean, for some of you that do fasting like Metabolic Monday, 1 day a week, that's very doable. So blood millimolar of beta-hydroxybutyrate, 2 millimolar, it decreased leucine oxidation. Remember, leucine is one of the main branched-chain amino acids that drives muscle protein synthesis. Leucine oxidation was inhibited by 70% and muscle protein synthesis increased by 10%. So think about that. So that shows, again, part of this anti-catabolic effect of ketones. Now, there's another reason why I personally think that this is pretty important. Outside of exercise, maybe ketones and branched-chain amino acids and whey protein, we don't have a lot of good therapies that slow down age-related muscle loss. That's just the nature of the beast. We don't. And so scientists are looking for this, right? Like if your grandmother or your parent falls and breaks their hip, gets a surgical procedure, we don't really have anything, like I'm talking like a drug or something like that. We don't have much that can attenuate some of that muscle loss. And so this is where ketones might come in. Their anti-catabolic effects might kind of preserve some of the muscle wasting achieved through chronic inflammatory diseases, through post-surgical states, when someone has maybe forced bed rest, maybe from complications of pregnancy, after a surgical procedure, after a wound, things like that. I think that's pretty interesting. So I would love to know kind of what your thoughts are. I mean, so what I personally have found is doing the 1 or 2 meal a day approach, even if I'm still doing my powerlifting, still doing training, I'm not losing muscle like I probably would have thought I would. Well, I know when I first started this 4 years ago now, 4 years ago in May, that is, I've thought for sure I'm gonna lose muscle mass, I'm gonna strip away muscle. I feel like my recovery's better, my baseline level of inflammation's better, and so many people are reporting the same thing. Now, it flies in the face of conventional wisdom because we think that, we have to have protein every 3 to 4 hours to stimulate this muscle protein synthesis. But again, when you're fat adapted, your ketone levels are probably going to be higher than the average bear. And guess what? There's anti-catabolic properties, at least at around blood millimolar level of 2. And so that's this research by Thompson et al. And links are below this, guys. So let's just see if you have any questions. Someone is talking about human growth hormone, HGH. Someone is saying, Larry says he can see the whiteboard, just not enough of it. CDoc says that is if exogenous ketones, endogenous ketones are 2 to 3 millimolar. Yeah, so again, great question, CDoc. So in this study, when they infuse supraphysiologic levels of a known pro-inflammatory signaling molecule known as endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide, blood millimolar levels of ketones needed to be above 2 to induce and augment and kind of ameliorate some of those pro-inflammatory, the induction of inflammation, right? So just keep that in mind. For those of you that are fasting, for those of you that are doing intermittent fasting, for those of you that are doing fasted workouts, you're not going to have this infusion of a very potent pro-inflammatory signaling molecule. So maybe in that state, a blood millimolar of beta-hydroxybutyrate of 0.8 or 1 millimolar would be sufficient to prevent loss of muscle tissue. We don't yet know in healthy subjects. This, again, is just in diseased subjects. So I'm just checking into the feed here, and it says the feed is good, which is always super, super helpful. And so yeah, what do you guys think about that? I think this stuff is super, super interesting. I'm totally curious to see what you guys think about that, and then we can get to some of your questions. And I'll have to mess with this whiteboard so that it's the right colors and everything like that. How I had it set up last week was a lot better. But did want to let you guys know, we do have a promotion over on myoscience.com on some of our grass-fed whey protein. So this is a grass-fed, grass-finished whey protein concentrate And so there's links below this. So you guys get 25% off. There's a promo code if you use that. And so we got a lot of great products there. One of the products that's clinically studied, a branched-chain amino acid that's been studied in humans by Dr. Wolf in Texas, actually. He's published over 150 studies on leucine, muscle protein synthesis, muscle protein breakdown, things like that. So promo code's below. If you're interested, since you're here right now, that 25% off expires tomorrow. So some amazing things that we use all the time in our family and our household, people throughout the world. We have customers in Sweden, we have customers in Finland, Denmark, the UK, New Zealand now. Where else? I mean, we have someone in Uruguay. People all over the world are using MyoScience supplements. So promo code there, 25% off. Just wanted to let you guys know about that. So I think this is interesting. I hope you enjoy it. Links are below, and let's get to some of your questions and see what you have found with the ketogenic diet and so forth. And also, there's a Twitter feed going on here that I did want to share with you about this particular study, and Stuart Phillips jumped in. And so Dom D'Agostino, Stuart Phillips, and Andrew Kutnick were talking, and Stuart Phillips had a good point. He said, lift, and meaning lift weights, and all of this becomes immaterial, meaning it doesn't really matter because you're providing that drive to the muscles to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So he was saying it's not really a big deal. Like, we shouldn't worry about ketones in this. And Dom D'Agostino had a really great comeback, and he said, the implications for this data are for pathological situations like cachexia, where training might not be an option, or where the goal is to attenuate the catabolic signals. Again, so ketones could be utilized as an anti-catabolic therapy in situations that I mentioned, where someone has forced bed rest, post-surgical procedure, post-injury, recovery, things along those lines, or if they're immobile for different reasons. So I think it's just another tool in the bag to sort of think about, and keeping that in mind, maybe you don't need the branched-chain amino acids when you're fasting if you're fat adapted, because if you're not fat adapted, you're probably not making and utilizing those ketones effectively. So let's get to some questions. All right, Loveland Medical Clinic says, what if you're using MCT instead of exogenous ketones? I love this, Loveland Medical Clinic, and I hope you're in Loveland, Colorado. I used to live in Boulder, and if I was to move back, I would definitely look at Loveland or Fort Collins. I love that area. So great question. So MCT oil is very ketogenic, as many of you know. So you can absolutely probably get your blood millimolar and beta-hydroxybutyrate above 2 millimolar very quickly using MCT oil. So I do like using MCT oil. Now, using a bunch of MCT oil and the ketones yielded from that is not going to affect or so-called decrease adipocyte lipolysis inhibition linked with ketones. Remember, it's feedback inhibition, guys. If I give you thyroid hormone, your thyroid gland is going to suppress its own endogenous production. As I've shared with you guys many times, in college, when I was in college, I did anabolic steroids. When I injected myself with testosterone, my brain reduce the signals to my testicles to tell my body to not make as much testosterone. This is called hypogonadism. Many men that are on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, things like that, their own testicles are not making testosterone. So the same thing happens when we give a bunch of MCT oil or a bunch of ketones. Eventually, when the blood millimolar level of beta-hydroxybutyrate gets to a certain level, our fat cells are going to stop releasing free fatty acids and glycerol. It's negative feedback inhibition. It just this happens with other molecules in the body. This happens with hormones. This happens with many things. So Loveland Medical Clinic, great point. So my name is Sean, but when I'm in ketosis, my name is Sean. That's funny, dude. Anita says, what would you suggest about BCAAs and other supplements prior to a long hike or bike ride? Awesome question. Remember, guys, I sell BCAAs. I sell whey protein. Okay, if you're doing a long hike, you don't need those things, unless that's a competition. Okay, look, let's just do, Decision Diamond. You have a weekend warrior who's training for an event. You have a weekend warrior who's just like training to get outside and have fun. If you're training for an event, you want to do everything you can to optimize recovery, to optimize the breakdown of muscle loss. You want to do every single thing you can. If you're a weekend warrior, you're just doing this for health and fun. Okay? So if you're training for an event, I do recommend BCAAs. I do recommend post-workout protein. I do recommend BCAAs before bed, all that sort of stuff, because you want to perform at your best during that event. But if you're a weekend warrior, you're optimizing longevity. You're trying to prevent cancer. You're having fun in the woods. You don't need all that stuff. So this is what I suggest. I don't know what all of your goals are. I don't know. Like me, I just signed up for a powerlifting competition. So instead of doing 36-hour fast on Metabolic Monday, I'm just going to do 24 hours. Instead of training fasted, I'm going to have whey protein and BCAAs intra-workout, okay? I'm going to have more post-workout carbohydrates. I want to do good in the competition, right? Am I going to compromise longevity and autophagy? Probably, maybe a little bit, but then in the summer, I'm going to take things back a little bit and not care so much about strength and training and do more hiking and do more fasted workouts and do more time-restricted feeding and so forth, right? So it really depends on your goals. And so yeah, if you're competitive, you want to do well in your event, fuel that event, guys. Don't try to be a warrior and do all these things fasted. You're not going to win a medal by doing that. You might compromise your ability to get on a podium or to place or to win your age group, right? So now, is winning in your age group or getting on a podium, is that synonymous with long-term health? Absolutely not. I mean, look at people that are like high-end out, look at Lance Armstrong, right? If Lance didn't race in 8, 9 Tour de France's, he might look a little bit younger than he does. And I'm not saying he looks bad, but just keep that in mind. So, Sean says, you have to have some muscle first, bud. Okay. Someone says, I understand the human body will only use ketones only if it has to. Again, only if it has to. This is why many people do not lose body fat. Well, I would actually disagree with that, Jake. Your understanding is incorrect. If you look at even in the heart muscle, the heart will preferentially use ketones under different metabolic stresses and states. If you look at babies, newborn babies, young children, mothers, lactating mothers, there's a reason why ketones are being utilized. It's actually a very efficient fuel source. And so if you look at the oxygen consumption of a heart that's pumping, its ejection fraction and oxygen demand goes down when it uses ketones. So it really depends. There's tissue specificity, guys. And so your red blood cells don't have the machinery to utilize ketones. The different neurons within your eye and retina and so forth, they can't use ketones. So there's context and tissue specificity that we need to keep in mind. So someone says right here, Dan 108274 says, what about beet juice powder? I would do that pre-workout. So beet juice has different compounds that may enhance nitric oxide synthase and things like that. So you might want to do that pre-workout. So Chaz says, how many calories do you typically get in one meal? Dude, I don't count calories. I'm sorry, I just don't. I stopped doing that. If I feel like I'm skinny, I eat more. If I feel big, I maintain or eat a little less. Someone says, do you recommend berberine hydrochloride? Yeah, we do. So in our autophagy bundle, which we have right below here at myoscience.com, we have an autophagy bundle. And so berberine hydrochloride, I recommend that on days where you are fasting. And again, you got to be very careful with this because it can be very powerful. There's a lot of published research on how berberine supports blood sugar health. So the combination of nutrients in there, I put that together to help to enhance autophagy. And so we have an autophagy bundle. But the berberine hydrochloride, I recommend it, if you have a history of, poor blood sugar health. That could be an, kind of a thing that you want to keep in mind. But the berberine, on days where you're where you're not as active, because if you're physically active, you probably don't need it as much. If you're new to this, if you're new to fasting, you can tinker with it because you'll be so surprised at kind of the ketogenic potential of berberine hydrochloride. And so keep that in mind. So someone says, what happens to catabolism if ketone level is between 2 and 5? Yeah, so I think that's kind of the sweet spot according to the research where you get the most anti-catabolic effects of the ketones at around that higher level of between 2 and 5 millimolar. So that's a great question. Yeah, so let's, all right guys, let me see here if I can pop out the chat even more. But how we doing? Was this fun? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? I'm trying to keep these under 30 minutes so they're digestible even if you're watching the replay. But I definitely want to do these. Do you like them on a Sunday? like them on Sunday afternoon, Sunday night for some of you. If you're in Australia, it might be like early Monday morning. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Let's see what else. Jade says, how often do you recommend working out for weight loss? We talk about this a lot in our Keto Lean Masterclass, but long story short, I recommend hitting every major muscle group 1 day a week. So upper body pushing, lower body pushing, upper body pulling, lower body pulling on different days. And then you can hit core, you can hit your erector spine in there. But it really depends, what your goals are, man. So, if you want a little bit more customization for this at our courses.highintensityhealth.com, we have the higher standard keto, and we also have the Keto Lean Masterclass with more tips on exercise and things along those lines. Rob Bacon says, I'm late. Sorry, guys. We did talk about quite a few things. I hope you enjoyed it. And thankfully, we didn't have any tech issues. Can you believe that? We did a live stream with no tech issues. So if you guys missed it, we got a great promotion going on our grass-fed whey protein over at myoscience.com. That's myoscience.com. Normally this is $79. This is very expensive material because it's one of the only truly grass-fed whey protein concentrates. So here's a small thing about whey protein. Is a lot of whey protein that you all can get on Amazon, on the internet, at natural food stores is a whey protein isolate. That means it's just the isolated whey protein. They've stripped away lactoferrin, immunoglobulins, all the beneficial properties of the whey protein. So that's why I worked really hard to get all of you to source a high quality whey protein concentrate that has immunoglobulins that are great for gut health. So we have a lot of vanilla. The chocolate's been super popular, but if you like vanilla, got a great deal for you. It's $54. So it comes down to around $2.20 a serving for 30 grams of protein at retail. So that's a good price for you. And also there's a promo code that expires tomorrow, Monday. For listening to this, if you like this content, you like this, we're gonna help you out over at myoscience.com, 25% off. We normally don't do promotions that deep, but to help you out, because I know a lot of you are buying supplements to enhance autophagy, support your blood sugar health, enhance sleep, and that's kind of the premise over at myoscience.com. So, how is it processed? That's a really good, so it's under a low heat. So that's a really good question. So it's a cold processed material. There's no hexanes, no solvents, no anything like that. So everything that we supply is made in an FDA CGMP certified facility. That means that the FDA audits these facilities to look at them to make sure that they're doing good, current what are called GMPs. Current good manufacturing practices. Also, we partner with NSF, so the National Sanitary Foundation independently certifies manufacturing facilities. So we have so I've been selling supplements for 13 years as a consultant. So I'm very picky when it comes to high quality and everything like that. And so I just partner with companies that are NSF CGMP, NSF certified for sport. Again, NSF means National Sanitary Foundation. So they're really strict. They go and look at the facility to make sure that they're cleaning things right, that they're not cross-contaminating. One of our primary manufacturers actually has an allergen gowning station. So allergens are only run on certain machines. So there's never any cross-contamination with something that might have soy or casein or gluten or things like that. And our primary manufacturer is also TGA certified. That's the Therapeutic Goods Association, which is essentially the FDA in Australia. And so they make sure that things are super top notch. They're way more strict than both the NSF and the FDA. So yeah, quality is super important for you guys that have followed me for a while. I mean, you know that I feed my chickens filtered water, organic, non-GMO food. So any supplements that we offer at Myoscience, quality is my number one thing. So someone says grain-fed beef is pretty nutrient void. Yeah, Joshua, I would agree with that. I mean, think about it, right? Everyone in the whole ketogenic diet community and so forth, metabolic therapies, is talking about how bad grains are for humans, right? They cause insulin resistance, they cause this, that. Yet people are like, oh, it's okay if you eat grain-fed animals. You're getting that intracellular lipid, infused in the muscle meat and dysfunctional signaling and fatty liver in the animals, right? How could that be good for you? So, by the way, most of the whey protein that you buy is from grain-fed cows, given recombinant bovine growth hormone, given steroids, given all this crap, right? You don't want that. You don't want that. Someone says Sunday school is great. Fast Reps, dude, thanks so much for being here. You always share stuff over on the Instagram. Very, very grateful for that, buddy. So it's cool to see you here over on the YouTube. Bradley says, in your situation where the meat is not premium, me as a college student, what is best? Great, Brady, I love that question. So Brady says, look, dude, I'm in college. I can't afford high quality crap. What do I do? Here's what you do. You go to a health food store one day a week, usually on a Monday or on a Tuesday. And so the meat that they don't sell, you can buy that because they're going to mark it down because there's a shelf life on meat, and you cook it right away. Okay, so that's tip number one. Go to a natural food store, a health food store on a Tuesday or a Monday, because remember, they buy a bunch of stuff because most people do their shopping on Sundays. So whatever left over that's may go bad soon, or the sell by date is coming up, they're going to mark it down. So that's the number one thing you do. The second thing that I would suggest is getting leaner meat. Again, I know you're like, whoa, Mike, leaner meat? Why are you going to do that? So remember, endocrine disrupting chemicals, environmental toxins, hormones, and so forth can be sequestered in fat tissue. So if you don't know where your animal is coming from, I would suggest getting leaner meat, because you just are basically trying to get the protein. But studies have actually shown, so this was a study that came out in 2011, I remember, where they looked at the persistent organic pollutants and various endocrine disrupting chemicals in pork, beef, and chicken. And so when in doubt, go with beef and go with the leanest beef. Again, I'm not anti-fat in animals. I'm not saying that. But if you're eating the fat from an animal that was eating crappy food and given antibiotics and hormones and all that, it's probably not the best fat anyway. It's probably sick fat. So I don't want those messages in my body. That's just me personally. So great question though. But also try to be friends, get to know someone that's a hunter. Go out and do some hunting, fishing, stuff like that. Go to the farmers markets. That can be helpful. But Brady, great question. So Bogdog says, what vitamin supplements do you take daily? Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I take vitamin D, I take vitamin K, I take magnesium. So our Myo Relax and Calm at Myoscience, very biased, but that product, so it's an electrolyte. Basically, it's a blood sugar health support. So you got your myo-inositol, you got your taurine, magnesium. So you got basically a lot of things covered, and it enhances sleep. So you got GABA and L-theanine. So I like that because it's hard to get a lot of taurine from the diet. You get a lot of magnesium from this formula as well. And there's not too many foods that offer a lot of magnesium. So that formula, again, it's called Myo Relax and Calm. We have it on Amazon. We have it on our website, myoscience.com. I like that. I take extra vitamin D. I take omega-3s. I take a monoglyceride-based omega-3 because that's better absorbed, things along those lines. I go back and forth with probiotics and stuff. We do a lot of fermented foods in our house, so I don't supplement too much with probiotics. What else? That's about it, to be honest. I mean, I do sometimes I take curcumin. I mean, I love curcumin. We cook with it, but it stains your teeth. So, and one of the curcumins that we do offer at Myoscience, I've been excited about this one particular raw material since 2010. It's called BCM 95. So I can't remember what that BCM stands for, but it's a 95% curcuminoid emulsified in the turmeric essential oils. And so these turmeric essential oils essentially not only have their own health benefits, but they enhance the absorption of the turmerones and the curcuminoids. And so we have it's very simply named curcumin plus essential oils. So it's got some really good absorption data on that. So I do take that, like if I'm having joint issues or training hard, things like that. But yeah, I mean, just mostly the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin K, magnesium, taurine, zinc. That's about it, but I don't generally recommend a multivitamin unless you've been eating a standard American diet forever. But even most multivitamins, they're not potent enough to really do a whole lot, right? So Joshua, Bogdan, great question. So that's it, guys. Let's see if there's I can get to one more question here. And then we're gonna go, gotta hang with my daughter. I'm teaching her how to ride her bike with no training wheels here. So what else we got? Yeah, you got it, bud. So I'll get to one last question. What do I think about vitamin D, omega-3s, and so forth after a prolonged fast? Okay, I would recommend these during a fast. That's absolutely fine. There's not enough caloric material and fat to kick you out of a fast with those nutrients. So I'm not too worried about that. Omega-3 users tend to preserve more lean muscle mass, spare more muscle, and burn more fat compared to non-omega-3 users. And so that's why we offer the Monozorb 1300. It's a monoglyceride-based fish oil. And we're going to be doing a lot more education around omega-3 fatty acid testing. A lot of you, I used to sell this technology back in 2010 to doctors, and a lot of doctors didn't know about this, but you can quantify and figure out if you would benefit from fish oils or not by testing the amount of EPA and DHA, those are your main omega-3 fats, inside your red blood cells. So keep that in mind, that you can actually test for this. So it's a lot more science-based than just saying, oh, I think I need a multivitamin. It's like you can test your red blood cell EPA, DHA. It's called the omega-3 index, to figure out if you would benefit from taking fish oil. And most people, again, because I sold this technology when I lived in Colorado and in Utah, I sold this to doctors. It was a test, an advanced test, part of an advanced lipoprotein cholesterol test, and there was a bundle together. And most people, even in Colorado, which even at that time was one of the most healthiest states in the US, a lot of people were deficient in omega-3 fats. And studies actually show, Bill Harris showed this, that when you get your red blood cell EPA DHA up to around 9%, your risk for sudden cardiac death drops. And so this is science, guys. And so you can just go to omegaquant.com. You can learn more about it. And so we have a money-back guarantee on our fish oil. If it, after 90 days, does not raise your red blood cell or at least double your omega-3 index, full money-back guarantee. So we stand by our products because we know they're effective, they're third-party tested, and so forth. And most fish oil companies don't even talk about this. They probably sell good products, but what we're trying to do is make this more evidence-based. If your omega-3 index is 9%, you probably don't need fish oil. But I would guarantee if you test yours and you don't eat fish on a regular basis or take fish oil, it's probably not where you should, what is optimal, what's considered optimal. So guys and gals, super grateful that you were here. Hopefully I was talking a little bit more calm and clear, and last time I was super fired up. But hope you have a great week. If you want to join the Metabolic Monday Facebook group, I'd be honored. Hop on over there. I would love to catch up with you guys over there, and hope you have an awesome week. And if you're fasting for Metabolic Monday, good luck on your fast, and we'll catch you next week. Have a good one, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, as always.